I just gave a talk for Unity on sound. Where were you guys in the last service? Sing a song. Yeah. We were talking about some of the seed syllables that come out of the Sanskrit tradition, and some of the seed syllables that you can use for toning, ah and ooh and e, and a really good one for the jaw and ears and eyes is a. So I figured everybody in Canada must be really healthy. A. What the heck are feeling tones anyway? I know I got enough phone calls about it. Do you mean one word? Yes, one word. If you look it up, it's 2 words, and just they sort of jumble emotion and feeling and everything about. But when I use the word feeling tones, I'm actually harking back to days when I did a series of talks and video presentations on the use of the voice and being aware of what's encoded in your voice, what you're actually saying when you don't realize what you're saying, because of the feeling tones, the sort of little pockets of cellular memory that are still residing in the body, that your sound moves through this vessel and carries some of that cellular memory. There's a joke about the couple, they've been married for 60 years, and the woman says, "Pass the salt, would you?" And the husband jumps up and says, "That's it, I've had it, I'm sick of this, always insulting me." And she's like, "I just said pass the salt." But he's been picking up for years on those feeling tones that have been coming through her, "Pass the salt." But I bring up the whole feeling tones thing because humanity has gotten pretty good at, it wasn't me, I didn't do it, I wasn't there. And certainly some of our world leaders are very good at this. It wasn't me, I didn't do it, I wasn't there. But we have a photo, it wasn't me, I didn't do it, I wasn't there. But I know that when we go against what we know is right, those feeling tones start a dancing. A little while ago I broke something, and it wasn't like a really huge deal. I don't even remember what I broke, but I do remember that I broke it because I didn't put it where it goes. I put it in a precarious place and I broke it. And so what I remember is the feeling tones of, I didn't look after it. It wasn't about the thing. I just didn't look after it. Because that's the deal. Stewardship applies to the micro and the macro. It's really easy to sit in our chairs and go, boy, if those people in power don't start making some decisions about, how to save the environment and take control, we're all in a lot of trouble. And sure, there's some truth to that, but we have a responsibility to sit in our chairs and get really clear on our personal stewardship of how we care for the things in our immediate environment, because the micro affects the macro. How we care for our feelings, for our energy, for our energetic system, what kind of stuff we're putting out in the world through our emotions and those encoded cellular feeling tones that come out in "pass the salt." Stewardship is about feeling into the highest outcome for whatever it is we brought into our lives to care for. When Reverend Carolyn spoke last Sunday about Greta Thunberg from Sweden, it prompted me to research this young woman more fully. I knew of her, but I have to say I was astonished. I watched about 5 or 6 different videos of her. She's eloquent in a second language. She's 16. She's knowledgeable. She's fearless. She's standing in front of a world full of political powers, either people who have been designated or self-designated as the powers that be, and she's saying no. She's saying this isn't okay. She's saying all of the things we should have said a long time ago. And that as adults, we've let the youth of our nation down. That's a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. I thought of my sons, and I thought of how brave they are. And all of this is right on the money, but what's also true is that we are responsible not only environmentally and intellectually and in our politics and in our interaction, but in our energy. We're responsible for how we feel. We're responsible for what we project into the world. We're responsible for the energy fields that we create. You know very well that if you are feeling, grumpy and out of sorts and you go out in the world, it feels like you have a day of bumping up against people all day long. But when you sit yourself down and go, okay, I got to clean that up. And you go out and you greet the world with a smile, a real one, and a twinkle in your eye, that's what you'll get back. Our energy field does affect the planet. And like sound, if you make a sound, ooh, okay, now you don't hear it anymore, but that sound hasn't stopped. It continues on and on and on through the universe. Our words, we talk about the power of the word. Our words have power. Our words, our thoughts, our intentions, the energy field that we can create with all of those continue on out into the world, whether we hear it or see it or are aware of it or not. When we feel out of alignment, we add a little more pollution to the atmosphere. And I've had plenty of talks with myself about this. Don't kid yourself. As I drove here last week to participate in the peace celebration, I was feeling a little grumpy about something, and I thought to myself, there's really no good reason for having everything so out of order that I can't tell what I'm doing. It just isn't. There's not really any good reason for feeling not at peace. We can tell all kinds of stories and defend to the death our right to be justifiably ticked about something. But if you get right down to it, there's no good reasons. We can take a stand, we can take action, we can work tirelessly to right a wrong, but adding our anger isn't helpful. It's our internal work to keep the peace. Stewardship. Said David Brooks wrote a book called The Second Mountain. And he said, when your life is defined by fervent commitment, you are on the second mountain. And to explain that, he was deeply concerned about the terrible compromises that successful people, especially politicians, he discussed, make in their careers. And Brooks looks at another way to live, what he calls the second mountain. The first mountain is what people of his well-educated, affluent milieu climb to gain good jobs and recognition and money and, the stuff, success, and doing what our society kind of expects us to do. While some people reach the top, they might find it unsatisfying. And others fall away and fail for whatever reason, and they spend time suffering in the valley, which is where Brooks finds the really interesting people. The people who have been made larger by suffering are brave enough to let parts of their old self die. He notes that we are taught to champion hyper-individualism as children, a tendency for people to act in a highly individual way without regard to society. But instead, we must open ourselves to family, community, and religious commitments. We must open ourselves to self-care, not self-absorption. Stewardship. The biblical definition, which Bonnie very neatly handled for us in the first talk of the month, she stole half my talk too, I had to rewrite it. I got here and I was like, seriously? The biblical definition of stewardship is to simply give care to all God has given us. Now, that's pretty straightforward. Give care to all God has given us. Well, what has God given us? Oh, my bad, everything. We must care for everything that we've accepted responsibility for. And that begs a different question. What constitutes actually accepting responsibility? Well, let's go back to the part where we live in a manifest world, a world that we co-create through our conscious or unconscious use of the law. So, the short version is if you don't want to be responsible for the things that you create, then you better make sure you're living a very pure and simple and clean life in your mind and that you leave a tiny, 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 tiny footprint and you care for that footprint. We're responsible for what we create. The other day, there's a lot of hiking trails around where we live, and I came upon yet another cigarette butt on the trail in the forest, in the middle of 1.5 million acres of forest. And I admit I have to do the work not to get angry about that. If Doug sees me seeing a cigarette butt and bending over to pick it up, he walks faster up the road. How hard can it be to carry a little pocket to put your butts in? I used to smoke, and I carried a little film canister in the days of film in my pocket. So I can feel a little tiny bit self-righteous about this one. But I realized that the people who are doing that simply do not possess the mental container or the mental equivalent for stewardship of the planet. They don't see the significance of one non-decomposing filter on the ground. Really, they're out in the middle of the bush. There's no one around. They have a smoke, and off they go. And I imagined for a moment, well, if 1 million people hiked that same trail and running on national averages, 200,000 of them had a cigarette, and being overly generous, 150,000 of those dropped their butt on the ground, it's now not a butt. It's a really big pile of toxic waste. That would be significant and visible in one place. But the next guy would come along and he'd drop his butt on the pile because there's a whole bunch of them there, so it must be okay. So here's a fun fact. They introduced filters in about the 50s, and a certain kind of lung cancer actually became much more common because of the filters, because of all of the toxins and chemicals that are in the filters, as opposed to just smoking a cigarette and getting all that tar. And there's been lots of attempts to ban them altogether and to ban them in public places and all kinds of things, and it's unsuccessful because there's this huge socially acceptable thing about smoking, and despite everything you hear, they're not going to just stop selling them, and people are going to smoke them, and a lot of those people are going to throw the butts on the ground. So what do we do about that? Well, we're all light workers. I think we're going to have to start working on that from the other end. But what that made me think about, without going into a diatribe about cigarette butts, oops, too late. You know, a lot of these people, they think at worst it's unsightly, and if they think about it at all, and they don't realize the tremendous impact of those toxins in the butts goes into the soil and the plants. It's hurting wildlife, all kinds of stuff. Like those toxins are, like the amount in one butt is really, really crazy. But I posit this. The reason the human race does not look after its planet as a whole is because systemically, and possibly even by design, but I won't go into that, we don't believe we are significant. I think there's a whole lot of people on this planet who don't believe that they are significant. We are each a drop of light in a vast ocean of divinity. And if we each treated ourselves as if we were Jesus himself, this planet would be in better shape. Our lives would be in better shape. You know how jets leave those trails? Well, we leave trails. And some are more visible on the Earth stage, famous artists and writers and public figures and whatnot. And some lead very quiet lives in a small circle. But whatever the case, We leave trails, both manifest and energetic. None of us is invisible. None of us is insignificant. And it's easy to look around the planet and say, well, we created quite a mess. Seriously, we created quite a mess. But now we have to care for it. And so how do we do that? Because it really does feel kind of big. But like everything else, it's a matter of manifestation, and the first steps always begin at home. If we want to clean up the planet, we got to clean up our minds first. If we want peace on the planet, we have to find peace inside first. And if we want to ensure abundance and well-being for every man, woman, and child on this planet, because certainly the planet has plenty, then we must claim that abundant state within first. Stewardship. We're pure potential. It's hard to even wrap your brain around what that means. We are pure potential. We are a creative being. What does that even mean? We are creative being, and absolute potential is the field in which we live and move and have our being. Wow. We're responsible for what we create, and as we show good stewardship of that which we have been given, we engage another law, which enables us to generate more of the same. If you plant a garden, you have to care for it if you want it to blossom and thrive. If you stop caring for it, at a certain point it'll say, you know, I worked really hard to grow for you, but I'm just not feeling the love anymore, so see ya. When we let things slide, it begins a pattern of a general malaise in all of our affairs. Little threads of that are going to carry over. What happens in the micro happens in the macro. We need to step up our game if we want everything to go smoothly. So stewardship isn't just about responsibility for that which we have created. It's also about generating an energy field in which we live. It's the flow of our own lives. I think a lot of you will recognize this. There's a well-known poem by Robert Fulghum. He wrote, "Most of what I really needed to know about how to live and what to do, I learned in kindergarten." Share everything. Play fair. Don't hit people. Put things back where you found them so they don't break. Clean up your own mess. Don't take things that aren't yours. Say you're sorry if you hurt somebody. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush. Warm cookies and cold milk are actually good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some, think some, draw and paint and sing and dance and work and play every day some. Take a nap in the afternoon. And when you go out in the world, watch out for traffic. Hold hands and stick together and be aware of wonder. And as I read that, I wondered how the world would really be if everybody lived this way. We must be good stewards of all we're given to look after because everything is a gift. And when we care for what we have, it sends the universe a message of well-being. And then that we're able to handle this kind of responsibility. Look how well she looked after that gift. Let's give her another one. I'd like some more, please. And think about the body. There's a hot topic. How many of us feel like we really care for our temple? And skills and gifts. There's another aspect of stewardship. Do what we're good at and that we love to do, even as a hobby. The world needs people who are feeling happy and fulfilled. That is good stewardship of the skills and gifts that you have been given. and appreciation. How excited do we really get about every little thing that contributes to the overall well-being of our lives? What's that? Rant pants, and what's the other one? Party pants. Yeah, party pants. It's a really fun game where somebody jumps up and says, "I love flowers," and everybody else runs up and goes, "I love flowers too." It's a really cool game. A couple of weeks ago, I made some rosemary mango chicken with a spiced cream sauce, and dang, it was good. I was for about 3 days. Everything I was doing, I was like, oh man, that was good. It was so good I couldn't stop thinking about it, with this total feeling of gratitude and joy for having had this meal miraculously appear on my dinner table, because I really don't know how I made it, and I've tried to make it since, and I can't. It was so good. I was even more excited than when I got gifted a whole bunch of peacock feathers in Mexico. That was really good too. And the planet. Have you been outside lately, anybody? Have you looked at the sky? Had a drink of nice, fresh New Mexico water? Eaten a piece of fruit? Do we really honor this planet that we live on? Do we really just say, thank you? You are a wonderful piece of broccoli. Thanks for being here. And when's the last time you saw a bunch of kids come running in from outside with their cheeks all flushed and their eyes sparkling, all bubbling over with tales of their great adventures? Because these kids are alive. Do you remember being that kid? I do. And this is the passion and energy we can choose to carry into the world. That passion and appreciation is part of our stewardship of this wonderful planet. Stewardship is also saying thank you, spinning that wheel of gratitude. And as with all things, stewardship is a choice, but the choice lies not in whether we are stewards. It lies only in how we are stewards. There's no choice in the whether. We exist, we're alive, we're on a planet, we're stewards, period, end discussion. Are we good stewards of our words and our actions, of all the things that begin at home? Because it's easy, as I said, to be an armchair critic. Before we send ourselves and our energy and thoughts and actions into the world, we need to think about how long their vibration continues long after we've stopped thinking about whatever it is that we did or said or thought. There's a wonderful chant. It says, Om Shambhu Devaya Namaha. It's very, very pretty. Om Shambhu Devaya Namaha. Om Shambhu Devaya Namaha. It'd be really funny if I just did that for the rest of the day and you wouldn't know when you should leave. It means blessings to the angel who bestows happiness upon the earth. So we talk about gratitude. And we know that when we give gratitude for what we desire as though we already have it, it has a way of showing up. Oh, I'm so grateful for the money to buy that Jag. Oh. Kidding, I don't actually want a Jag. This is a great chant to do for the well-being of the planet, as though it is already completely well. Let's give gratitude for a healthy, beautiful, bountiful, clean, safe, peaceful planet. We are spiritual beings, and we live on earth where the field of all possibility is the governing law. If we can think it, if we can imagine it, we can create it. but then we have to look after it. So I know God is all and all is God. God is the gift of abundance in every fiber of our being, of our existence, of our planet, of our lives. There is no spot that God is not, and so I know that God is right here, right now. It's expressing itself in and as and through each and every one of us. And so I know that as these seeds of divinity, as these godlings, as these God beings, as these adamantine particles of light and love that are scattered throughout the cosmos, I know that everywhere we move, everywhere we are, everything we think, everything we do is the emanation of that light most high, of that pure consciousness. I know that as we move around the planet, that every action and every thought and every intention is designed to uplift that planet, to uphold our commitment as stewards, and to uphold the highest possible opportunity for everybody, whether they know they're in the field or not, because they are. And I know that as I live and move and have my being, I am so blessed. Every single aspect, every single thing has just been such a huge blessing. And I carry that knowledge. I carry that internal beating, ticking, vibrating sense of who and whose I am into every day and into all my affairs and into every conversation and every word I speak and everything I feel. Because I know there's no spot where God is not. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for each and every one of you, for every opportunity that's been given to me here, for this community, for this opportunity for me to safely and confidently expand into a greater version of myself. I'm grateful for every one of you. And I release these words into the law, knowing that this and way, way more is already done in the mind of the one. I invite you to join me in saying, and so it is.